Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. We have a very important video today, especially with the recent attack on Yemen. But it wasn't just Yemen that was very active today. We had activity in Gaza, in the West Bank, from Iraq and Iran as well. But I'm gonna start off with Yemen. So the coalition led by the United States and the United Kingdom, they attacked Yemen. They attacked the areas of Sana'a, Al-Hudaydah, Ta'iz, Al-Hajjah, and Sa'da. They killed 5 people and wounded 6 others, and the attacks were quite large in Yemen. We had responses from the defense minister, from the advisor, from the spokesperson of the Yemeni army for Ansarullah, and from Abdul Malik al-Houthi himself, the leader of the Houthi movement Ansarullah. They reiterated in all of their responses combined that this escalation won't go without punishment. It won't stop them from attacking ships related to Israel. They will continue to allow international trade, but that there's also risk of escalation. China also said that they're worried, and Hamas released a statement saying that they condemn the attack on Yemen, and they put the responsibility on the United States and the United Kingdom, the coalition as a whole, for any potential escalation. Now, a couple of important things to note here. The United Kingdom, justifying this attack, said the international law allows it to do such an attack when they're put in danger and they're unable to resolve it in different manners. The United States, on the other hand, they used the typical bypass alleyway laws to bypass Congress and do whatever they like when it comes to wars and international conflicts. Typical mafia behavior, a very well organized cartel. This is how they're behaving. And it's also important to mention here, what the Yemenis are doing is what Western countries do. If they want to impose a blockade on a country that's committing genocide, for example, if they want to criticize or attack a country for breaching international law, and they're entitled to do that. So what the Yemenis are doing is a noble thing. I said that previously several times. And with their recent attacks on Israeli-related ships, they're doing the democratic thing. You've had protests in Yemen on a weekly basis, millions of people. I mean, the biggest protests supporting Palestine in the whole world in comparison to the size of the country are in Yemen on a weekly basis. And when you have people calling their governments to take action, their governments should listen. So what the Yemeni government is doing, Ansarullah, they're doing the democratic thing. They're listening to the will of the people. Unlike what we have here in Britain, in the United States, and in other Western countries where you have people going out to express their outrage for this genocide being committed by this satanic death cult state called Israel, and the governments are labeling them and criticizing them and putting a bad label on them, calling them all sorts of stuff, and not listening, continuing with the blind support for this satanic death cult. So with Yemen, really and truly, these people are more democratic than most Western regimes, most Western countries. They're more democratic, the Yemenis. They listen to what their people want and they implement it. And another thing here, clearly by the United States and the United Kingdom, this coalition attacking Yemen, they proved that they can take action. So they can take action for something. But that something, to them, it's financially related. It's not motivated by the lives of people, by human rights, by anything good. It's to do with political greed, and it's there to support a genocidal death cult. They're not saying anything about the ICJ. You hardly hear anything in Western mainstream media about Israel going to international court for committing genocide. The fact that the most explosive used in 2023 have been on civil population in Gaza, in one of the most highly dense populated areas in the world, that's been under siege for 17 years with people living in poverty. So this just really highlights which is the moral side, really. And when it comes to what's happening, clearly the Yemenis are the moral people with the moral government doing the moral thing. And yet again, you have the United States government, the United Kingdom government, and the coalition with the typical immoral, genocidal support that's not very far from their colonial and enslavement history. I mean, I said it before, with these countries that support Israel, many of them, they have a vast, rich history of colonialism, enslavement, and mass genocide, whether against the indigenous people in America, when it comes to the British Empire, in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East. So no wonder they're supporting this death cult. However, it doesn't seem like they're learning the lesson. And what they're doing in the Middle East is just pushing for a further escalation that many people will be suffering from. But we know exactly who will be responsible for this escalation, the death cult and its backers. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is the updates on the ground. Now, there have been multiple updates from Gaza, from the West Bank, from Iraq as well, and with Iran too. With regards to Gaza, Saraya al-Quds, the armed wing of the PIJ, they launched multiple rockets on Ashdod or Sdoud in the southern part of Israel. They also detonated minefields, large attacks against Israeli soldiers, and they also used mortar shells against Israeli soldier gatherings, alongside some activity from Kataib Shuhada al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades, which traditionally belongs to the Fatah movement. And we haven't seen very much activity from them, but they're more active recently in Gaza. We've also had another report from Israeli sources that the IDF carried out over 2,130 evacuation actions for wounded soldiers from Gaza. And again, these numbers, although we always don't take them as wholly or completely correct, they just indicate the numbers of losses in the Israeli army that are way higher than what we're being told. In the West Bank, we had more clashes in Jenin refugee camp. There were attacks on Israeli soldiers and vehicles, and Israel also, the health ministry in Ramallah, they said that a 19-year-old boy, Khalid Zubaydi, was beaten to death by Israeli security forces. So they're continuing their brutality, their inhumanity and barbarism, despite the fact that we have the ICJ case and Israel is being blamed for genocide in Gaza. Israel also confirmed that they had 42 casualties in the last 24 hours, 14 of which are in Gaza. They didn't specify the other areas, but they could be related with some attacks from the Iraqi resistance. The Iraqi resistance, they said that they targeted the appropriate targets next to Jordan River and Eilat, al-Rashrash in southern Israel. They didn't specify exactly what they targeted, but the casualties from the IDF could well be from those areas too, or from Lebanon, although we haven't had confirmations about many activities between Israel and Lebanon today. And there was another development from Iran. Now, this is official Iran. The Iranian Navy, they took over an oil ship next to Oman. So this is another Iranian act. I think we had one before previously in recent weeks, but this is yet another direct Iranian involvement, and it's somehow related to the escalation of the coalition in the region and Iran signaling that we're willing to take more action as well as a country, not only our allies in the region, which was the case so far. And again, we must reiterate here, all of this escalation in the Red Sea, it's to save the genocidal apartheid state of Israel. So you have British officials claiming that it's there to protect lives. It's not to protect lives. It's to protect people who take lives. It's to protect the genocidal, satanic death cult state in Israel. It's not there to save lives. It's there to save your corporate interests, your greedy corporations. You prove to the world repeatedly that you don't care about human lives. You don't value human life. All you care about is your greedy interests. And the people of the region are sick of you, and sick of your arrogance. And maybe this war will once and for all expel all of these foreign forces from the Middle East once and for all, including the apartheid regime, and let the people live in peace finally after so many years of suffering because of this neo-colonial approach that the United States, the United Kingdom, and many other countries have against the Middle East and other parts of the world. The last thing I wanted to talk about is the ICJ. So today we've had the Israeli-British lawyer defending Israel with a massive show of embarrassment, mumbling, losing a paper, not knowing how to defend himself properly. And even the judge, one of the judges, he fell asleep when he was listening to him. So these people have no case, really, to defend this genocide. Another comment I wanted to talk about with relation to the ICJ is a statement by Gilles Devers, who is a French lawyer, well-known defender of Palestine, who actually took action in the ICJ, albeit on behalf of organizations in 2008, 2009. He said that Israel doesn't have a solid defense case, even with the terrorism labeling or them saying that they want to defend themselves. And this guy is very, very well known, and he was a very vocal advocate for Palestine, a well-known defender of the Palestinian cause. And it was interesting to hear that from him, especially now that people are awaiting what the outcome will be, especially after the judges hear the Israeli defense. And so far, it isn't looking great for them at all. Another thing that we saw today is Germany declaring support in defense of Israel in the ICJ. You might as well bring back Nazism in Germany if you want to protect Israel. So you're protecting a Nazi regime in Israel. How about you reintroduce the Third, Fourth Reich in Germany, supporting Israel? You created this problem with Zionism. You know, they had collaboration with the Nazis, Zionists, the Ha'avara agreement, and in many ways, Zionism as a movement was indeed the final solution for the Jewish question. You had people in Germany and in Europe who wanted to expel the Jewish people from Europe, and Zionism did it for them. They obviously distorted everything to do with the core principles of Judaism, but they had dealings with the Nazis and they took them to Israel, and they're now committing atrocities worse than the Nazis. So if Germany is supporting Israel, it might as well reestablish Nazism and bring us a new Hitler in Germany. I mean, seriously, what are they thinking, these people? You had people, you claim that you're protecting Israel because you say they went through all of that in the Holocaust. Well, they're committing a Holocaust. Or are you one of those countries and governments who don't consider the Palestinians to be people or normal human beings because they're not of the Aryan race? So it's really shameful, these countries that are supporting Israel in the ICJ. These people will go down in history similar to the same people who supported Nazi Germany, who supported the atrocities of Nazi Germany. And there's a lot of talk about what's gonna happen after the ICJ has its decision and ruling against Israel. The compliance rate with the ICJ rulings is typically around 50%. It's usually lower when it comes to more serious cases. But really and truly, I mean, we don't expect much from international courts when it comes to Israel. You know how many UN resolutions there are in support of Palestine, and how many times Israel, pissed on international law. They break international law constantly. And their compliance or non-compliance with the ICJ is, I think, in my opinion, something secondary. The first thing stopping the Israeli satanic ambitions in the region and in Gaza particularly is the resistance. Israel proved time after time that they only understand the language of force, which is the language that the Palestinian resistance is speaking to Israel with. And I hope that we are able to reach some sort of conclusions and enforcement from the ICJ. But what's most important is the Palestinian resistance, perseverance, and success when it comes to this genocide, ethnic cleansing attempt in Gaza. And I do firmly believe that they will end up prevailing and winning. We'll also obviously monitor what's going to happen with the ICJ and with the decisions they come up with and what type of enforcement will be taken against Israel. So these were the main things that I wanted to talk to you about today. I hope I've added some beneficial information for you, and I will hopefully see you soon in the next video. Take care.